On the other side of this heavy door, I can only imagine what they're thinking. Perhaps they're questioning my sanity, feeling quite unsettled by my absence. But their concerns are lost on me, and I have no interest in seeking their approval. With a cheerful grin, I waved at the trio of anxious figures beyond the door and called out, "Good luck making your way back safely." My name is Karen, a 32-year-old newlywed. Not long ago, my husband and I celebrated our first anniversary, and while we haven't started a family yet, I cherish this chapter of our lives. Before tying the knot, I adored embarking on solo day trips by train whenever I had a free day. My friends often asked if I didn't feel lonely traveling alone, but I discovered a unique joy in wandering at my own pace, free from a strict itinerary. Though there was a hint of solitude, the thrill of exploration always outweighed it. I have a beloved travel magazine that I sometimes turn to for inspiration on my adventures. As my routine unfolded, I began to notice a curious coincidence. Wasn't that the same man I saw last week? It happened so frequently that one might call it fate, if they believed in such things. At first, it was a little unsettling, but it turned out he felt the same way. One day, he approached me hesitantly, saying, I'm sorry if I'm mistaken, but haven't we met before in different places?" To break the awkwardness, I showed him my travel magazine and confidently explained that I was following one of its suggested trips. To my surprise, he revealed that he had the same magazine and smiled broadly. That's how I met Mason, my future husband. He was captivating with a carefree approach to travel, always packing light for his journeys while I tended to over-prepare. He joked, "With everything going cashless now, all you need is a mobile phone." Our conversation sparkled with excitement as we discovered our shared passion for travel. We exchanged contact details, and our solo trips gradually transformed into joint adventures. I delighted in the fact that sharing experiences made them even more memorable, and local delicacies tasted better when enjoyed with someone special. After about 8 months of dating, Mason proposed, and I couldn't have been happier. Just 8 months into our relationship, we made the joyful decision to marry, embarking on what I thought would be a blissful new chapter in our lives. However, this happiness was soon overshadowed by the presence of Mason's parents, Austin and Janet, who lived just a 25-minute drive away. Both in their 50s, with Janet working part-time while they remained active in the workforce, they initially visited our home quite often. However, over time, we found a comfortable balance with fewer visits. Our post-wedding life included regular trips to various tourist spots, continuing a tradition we both loved. Recently, Mason embraced a minimalist lifestyle, carrying only his mobile phone and leaving his wallet with me. "It feels so light, I hardly look ready to go out, do I?" he joked with a satisfied grin. I silently wished he would at least carry his wallet, but it was a minor inconvenience. Then one ordinary day took an unexpected turn when Mason casually suggested, "By the way, my parents' wedding anniversary is coming up. How about we invite them on our next trip?" I felt a sudden tightness in my chest at the suggestion, but I forced a smile and replied, "Yes, that sounds great. We haven't seen Janet and Austin recently anyway." Mason, oblivious to my discomfort, didn't notice the strain in my expression. The next day, when I called his parents to extend the invitation, they were thrilled. "I guess I have to give it my best shot," I thought, bracing myself. Honestly, I find it challenging to be around my in-laws. They aren't unpleasant people. We just don't seem to mesh well. I'm quite reserved and prefer calm environments, while they are the epitome of high energy, which can be overwhelming for me. The first time I met them, their boisterous enthusiasm took me by surprise. "Nice to meet you. I'm Mason's mom, and this is his dad," they declared with the gusto of stand-up comedians, causing me to tense up involuntarily. Later, when the four of us, Mason, his parents, and I, went out for dinner, they chose the restaurant. I wondered if it was one of their favorite spots, given their enthusiastic choice. When we arrived, I was greeted by the sight of an all-you-can-eat buffet. The idea of meeting their son's girlfriend for the first time in such an informal setting made me chuckle to myself. "We've been so anxious today that we haven't eaten anything since this morning," Janet exclaimed, her beaming smile seemingly immune to any nerves. "That's right, we need to get our money's worth," Austin chimed in, revealing the true reason behind their skipped breakfast. Their loud voices drew discreet chuckles from other diners, making me feel a bit embarrassed and eager to leave. I glanced around, hoping Mason shared my discomfort, but to my surprise, he had already headed off to get food. Not to be outdone, his parents also jumped up, ready to load their plates as if preparing for a long winter's hibernation. Watching them, I couldn't help but wonder, can I really become a part of this family? I managed only a strained smile amid their boisterous energy, finding myself barely able to touch my food as I wrestled with doubts about my future with Mason. However, my apprehensions softened a bit when they affectionately remarked at the end of our meal, "What a wonderful girlfriend Mason has. He may be a bit awkward, but please take good care of him, Karen." Their sincere words warmed my heart. I loved Mason, and despite their overwhelming nature, I believed his parents meant well. When Mason proposed a few months later, I accepted without hesitation, convinced of our bond. Yet it turned out I wasn't as skilled at reading people as I thought. At our wedding, Mason's parents seemed to overlook the solemnity of the ceremony. Their attention instead focused on the buffet, much to my own parents' dismay. Mason's brother Brian appeared to be the only one aware of the awkwardness. "I'm sorry my parents showed such an embarrassing side," he confessed, his face flushed. "It's really shameful. I learned from Brian that he lives alone and has a somewhat strained relationship with our in-laws. They once complained, 'That boy is always so noisy with his complaints.' Just recently, he had boasted about buying several eggs despite a one-per-person limit, to which I had scolded him. 'Annoy,' he retorted. 'Don't you feel guilty about benefiting yourself at the expense of others?' Hearing that made me realize the complexities of our new family dynamics. I couldn't help but wonder, isn't that a fair point? What's wrong with expecting a little consideration? My thoughts were stirred by a recent visit from my in-laws, Janet and Austin, to our new home. They arrived empty-handed, which wasn't an issue, but soon began rummaging through our shelves. "Isn't this the snack they're advertising on TV? I've been dying to try it. Oh, and this one too." They treated my carefully chosen snacks as though they were on a scavenger hunt. Mason, ever so nonchalant, told them, "If you want them, take them home." "That's fine, right, Karen?" I wanted to express my frustration right then and there, but all I managed was a forced smile. It was becoming clear that my in-laws were quite the moochers, their constant casualness wearing me down. The demands of "I want this" and "give me that" wore me down in the early days of our marriage. They visited weekly, and each encounter left me feeling increasingly on edge. One day, I finally couldn't hold back my irritation any longer. "Mason, don't you think there's something off about Janet and Austin? They're kind of overbearing." My frustration boiled over into a full-blown argument, and Mason seemed genuinely perplexed by my anger. "No, not really. They've always been like this. Don't worry about it," he said, patting my shoulder. That only fueled my irritation further. "You kidding me? If this keeps up, I'll consider a divorce." My raised voice alarmed Mason, and he quickly intervened to put a stop to his parents' intrusive visits. Whatever he said to them worked, because our home life returned to a semblance of peace. However, the thought of traveling with them still made me anxious. On the day of the trip, I was taken aback to see them waiting, seemingly ready. "It's been a while. I heard you've been busy with work. It must be tough," Janet said, trying to make conversation. Despite her words, I was far from calm, especially when I noticed something odd. Janet and Austin, where's your luggage?" On closer inspection, I realized they hadn't brought anything with them, not even for a day trip. "Isn't it normal to bring at least a bag?" I asked. "We wanted to be ready to move quickly," they explained, leaving me bewildered and bracing for whatever might come next. As I complained about a sore shoulder, the response felt all too familiar and only added to my confusion. The trip unfolded just as disastrously as I had feared. Soon, it became clear that my in-laws had conveniently forgotten their wallets, feigning surprise with a casual, "That's strange, isn't it?" I watched them play innocent, and my unease deepened. I found myself contemplating whether it would be better to cut the trip short or cancel it altogether. Unfortunately, my concerns fell on deaf ears. An exasperated Mason reassured me, "My folks have always been like this. I'll cover for them, but I'll make sure they pay me back." It seemed the trip would proceed as his parents laughed and offered hollow apologies. All I felt was disgust. Even after we arrived at our destination, their rudeness continued. At a store, they complained loudly about the lack of free samples, exclaiming, "Wow, stingy, huh?" When I bought a drink and hadn't even taken a sip, Janet asked, "Can I have a sip? I'm thirsty too." I can't believe I forgot my wallet. I forced a smile as Mason finally intervened, saying, "Stop it, it's embarrassing. Look, I'll buy you one." Overhearing this, Austin muttered under his breath. What a stingy woman. I bristled at his lack of compassion, thinking bitterly, I could say the same about you. I should have walked away then, but my stubbornness kept me there. The pattern repeated itself 2 more times. After seemingly enjoying our first trip, Janet contacted Mason to plan another. When I saw them at the station platform again, a chill ran down my spine. This time, they remembered their wallets. But when it came time to pay, Austin exclaimed, "Oh no, this is the wallet I used before." I rushed out in such a hurry. Their blatant lie was something only Mason seemed willing to believe. On the third trip, they forgot their wallets again. By then, it was clear their forgetfulness was intentional. I confronted Janet directly, asking, "Excuse me, but did you deliberately forget your wallet? You never intended to pay, did you?" My accusation made her face flush with anger, and Austin snapped back, "What a rude woman." Apologized to Janet. Fueled by long-held frustration, I stood my ground. "No way, both of you are just too greedy." Caught in the heated exchange, Mason appeared at a loss while curious tourists around us began to watch the spectacle. Noticing their gazes, Mason felt embarrassed and finally pleaded, "Stop it, please." Overwhelmed by the entire ordeal, I broke down in tears, feeling utterly disillusioned. As the confrontation reached its peak, the in-laws' reaction took an unexpected turn. Janet rushed over to a tearful Mason and, with Austin silently by her side, said, "I'm sorry, Mason. It was my fault. You're so kind to cry for me." I stood there, bewildered by their melodramatic response, my mind racing with one clear thought. This is impossible. All I could think was that I wanted a divorce as I watched tears stream down Mason's cheeks. Sensing the gravity of the situation, his parents lost their previously combative demeanor. "Karen, we know we're often in the wrong," they admitted. "It's Mason's money, but we've still taken advantage of him." Their repetition of "it's Mason's money" dripped with a sarcasm that revealed their lack of genuine remorse, confirming my suspicions that their forgetfulness about their wallets was intentional. Janet casually referred to Mason's money, oblivious to the fact that Mason and I both contributed to our finances. His salary was only slightly higher than mine, making our incomes nearly equal. Every outing with the in-laws recently had ended with them wanting something. "I want to buy this too. Maybe some gifts for the neighbors as well. What's that? Looks tasty. Hey Mason, buy that for me." Their endless demands had racked up shockingly high bills on Mason's credit card, and we had been living primarily off my salary for the past few months. At the time of our marriage, I had viewed our finances as shared, believing in spending within our means and not burdening each other. What infuriated me the most was Mason's reliance on cash during our travels. "What? Only cash here?" he exclaimed, pulling out his nearly empty wallet from my bag, which contained just a few coins. "No, I messed up. You know I don't carry cash," he said, devoid of malice. This still angered me, especially since I always covered my expenses. I couldn't help but feel that his parents thought I was freeloading off Mason's income while simply complaining. We split our living expenses, so their accusations were not only unfounded but deeply unpleasant. As I watched Mason cry, with Austin attempting to console him, I had a moment of introspection. "I'm sorry for being presumptuous," I finally said, deciding to diffuse the tension. "You guys go ahead on the train. I'll buy some drinks." Though reluctant, this decision was my attempt to restore some temporary peace. With a serene smile, I watched as Mason and the in-laws boarded the train. Their expressions shifted from happiness to panic when they realized I wasn't following. Sensing something amiss, Mason texted me, "Karen, are you coming? The train is about to leave." As the train doors began to close, I could see the panic etched on Mason's face. He seemed to be shouting something, but I was busy replying to his message. "I'm divorcing you. If your parents are so important to you, then live happily with them. Goodbye." I turned my back on Mason's frantic calls and texts, contemplating whether he even recognized the chaos he was causing on the train. Through the closing doors, his expression shifted from confusion to anger. "Hey, open this door. Are you crazy? I won't forgive you," he shouted, as if I needed his approval. I could see his parents yelling too, but their voices were drowned out in the noise of the train. Smiling at the bewildered trio, I muttered to myself, "Let's see if you make it back safely. Good luck." The train pulled away swiftly, vanishing from sight. As it departed, I felt a mix of relief and defiance. Knowing the next stop was quite a distance away, I hurried home to pack my things. I decided to stay with a friend while I figured out my next steps. Meanwhile, the barrage of messages from Mason continued until they abruptly stopped. His phone likely died. He often forgot to charge it overnight, and just that morning he mentioned it was at only 30%. Portable battery chargers are essential, he often said. Ironically, his essential charger was in my bag, along with his wallet. As I discussed my situation with my friend, my phone rang unexpectedly. It was Brian, Mason's brother. "Karen, I'm sorry. Did something happen?" he asked. Brian explained that Mason's phone had run out of battery, and in his panic, he had dropped it, shattering the screen. Unable to contact me, the desperate in-laws turned to Brian. Instead of probing, he listened as I recounted everything about Mason and his parents, speaking without restraint. I could hear Brian's tone sharpen as I spoke. In the background, I caught snippets of the in-laws insisting that Brian, known for his articulate nature, would surely outmaneuver me in this argument. After I finished, Brian snapped, his voice taking on an authoritative edge. "Hey, you scoundrel. Are you stupid?" When Brian grew truly angry, his imposing demeanor surfaced. As the voice of reason, his words carried weight, and the in-laws' loud bickering echoed in the background. Choosing that moment, I quietly ended the call. Though Mason had initially been unsettled by the idea of divorce, my firm stance communicated through a lawyer led him to reluctantly accept the separation. Later, Brian confided that the in-laws had a notorious reputation, disliked not only by neighbors but also by those they had known in school. When Mason moved back to his parents' house, he quickly became the subject of local gossip, and now all three of them seldom ventured outside. Mason's colleagues, unsure how to address the rapid divorce, began to treat him cautiously as if he were a sensitive topic. Finding some humor in the situation, Brian shared that the in-laws were infamous even at the local supermarket for their shameless antics, such as demanding discounts on nearly expired items or asking for freebies due to minor damages. He expressed his long-standing embarrassment and disdain for their behavior, noting that their actions were influenced by a gambling addiction, which explained their constant search for bargains and seemingly insatiable hunger. When people asked me about the reason for my divorce, I simply mentioned a fundamental difference in values. Tolerating such behavior would require an extraordinarily broad-minded person, something I realized I could not be. Since the divorce, I've continued my work and even taken on a side job as a freelance writer, inspired by the success of my travel blog, which caught the attention of a publisher. My passion for travel has seamlessly blended with my new writing assignments, and I've discovered that traveling solo suits me best. Last month, my writing earned me a decent income, enabling me to plan a vacation to a distant resort for some much-needed relaxation. At just 32 years old, I feel like my life is truly just beginning, filled with new possibilities and free from the turmoil that once clouded my happiness.